A massive geophysical disaster struck the rugged border region between Nepal and China's Tibet Autonomous Region on Wednesday morning, August 26, 2026. A sudden glacial collapse and colossal rock and ice landslide high in the Himalayas unleashed an unimaginable wall of water, mud, and heavy debris that tore down the Bhotekoshi and Trishuli River valleys. The deluge obliterated entire mountain communities, swept away vital highway infrastructure, and severely crippled the region's primary hydroelectric network. As of Friday, August 28, 2026, Nepalese authorities have confirmed the death toll has reached 389 people in Nepal, while local officials across the border in Tibet's Gyirong County have reported 3 deaths amid fears of widespread casualties. Well over 1,300 people remain missing or entirely out of contact, including hundreds of international tourists, high-altitude trekkers, and religious pilgrims. The disaster began unfolding at approximately 8:37 a.m. local time on Wednesday when a massive chunk of a mountainside tore away in the high-altitude pass. According to data compiled by the U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, and seismometers as far away as Germany, the impact of the ice and rock avalanche was so powerful that it registered as a 5.2 magnitude seismic event. Millions of tons of rock and glacial ice plunged into the narrow gorges below, instantly obliterating supraglacial ponds and forcing a catastrophic volume of trapped water, mud, and massive boulders downstream. The speed of the flash flood left downstream residents and travelers with virtually no time to react. Witnesses described hearing a deep, deafening roar echoing through the valleys, a sound many initially mistook for a violent earthquake. Within moments, a towering wall of thick mud and rock-laden water crashed through prominent settlements in Nepal's Rasuwa and Nuwakot districts. The historic Rasuvagadhi Border checkpoint, a vital multi-story concrete facility handling trade between Nepal and China, was engulfed and largely destroyed by the fast-moving wave of material. Surrounding villages like Timure, Syabrubesi, Hakubesi, Mailung, and Shanti Bazar bore the full brunt of the torrent. Entire rows of houses, commercial shops, and international transit vehicles were ripped from their foundations and swept downriver. Survivors who managed to flee to higher ground recounted harrowing stories of escape. Smriti Ojha, a 17-year-old resident of the area, said she was preparing for school when the ground began to tremble violently. Looking out, she saw the river expand into a monstrous wave carrying trees and vehicles, giving her family only seconds to sprint up a steep mountain slope. Another resident, Shugam Mala, described desperately holding on to his mother's hand to pull her out of the path of a fast-moving mudslide that claimed their home. For those caught in the immediate valley floor, survival was a matter of fractions of a minute. Farmers reported the complete loss of their livelihoods, with agricultural land, livestock, and stored grain reserves instantly buried beneath a thick layer of dense, cloying sediment that hardens like concrete as it settles. The disaster has also sparked an international search crisis due to the high volume of foreign nationals visiting the region. The Upper Trishuli and Bhotekoshi corridors are highly popular routes for international mountaineers, hikers exploring local national parks, and pilgrims embarking on the Kailash Mansaravar Yatra. Nepal's Foreign Minister, Shishir Kanal, informed Parliament that the missing include hundreds of foreign travelers from over 24 countries. Among those unaccounted for are at least 142 Indian nationals, alongside travelers from Australia, the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Netherlands. A 32-member tour group from Kolkata, India, became entirely untraceable after the flood hit their transit site. The trekking agency Himalayan Glacier reported that 47 people from one of its organized tour groups, comprising citizens from multiple Western and Asian nations, remain missing in the disaster zone. Compounding the tragedy is a widespread collapse of critical infrastructure, which has severely hindered emergency response efforts. The flash flood washed away at least 80 bridges and destroyed or heavily submerged roughly 40 kilometers, 25 miles, of primary highways, effectively cutting off the Rasuwa district from the rest of Nepal. Telecommunication networks, cell towers, and power lines were severed instantly, leaving rescue agencies struggling to establish contact with isolated pockets of survivors. The energy sector has suffered a massive blow, with the Nepal Electricity Authority, NEA, reporting severe damage to 6 major hydropower and transmission facilities in the river basin. Impacted sites include the Rasuvagadhi, Chilime, Trishuli 3A, and Devigat power stations. The structural damage has knocked roughly 431 megawatts of electricity off the national power grid, while under construction energy projects representing another 470 megawatts have faced extensive destruction. This sudden loss of energy has triggered blackouts across several central districts and hampered local hospital operations and emergency communications. The Nepalese army, armed police force, and specialized disaster management personnel have deployed helicopters, drones, and canine units to lead search and rescue operations. However, aerial operations have been repeatedly grounded or restricted by high river levels, persistent monsoon-fueled rainstorms, and thick cloud cover hanging over the mountain passes. Emergency workers are forced to navigate treacherous, muddy terrain on foot, clambering over unstable piles of boulders and debris to reach flattened villages. On the northern side of the border, the Chinese government has deployed nearly 800 rescue workers, speedboats, and heavy machinery to Gyirong County. Chinese Premier Li Qiang traveled to the affected border region on Thursday to directly oversee search efforts and coordinate cross-border response strategies. International aid organizations have begun mobilizing emergency supplies to assist the thousands of displaced residents currently lacking basic necessities. The Nepal Red Cross Society, supported by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, has deployed teams to distribute clean drinking water, temporary shelter materials, blankets, and urgent first aid kits. UNICEF warned that children and individuals with disabilities are particularly vulnerable in the remote, cut-off communities, raising concerns over waterborne diseases as local water systems have been destroyed. The United Nations has begun mobilizing personnel and resources, while the United States government announced an initial $500,000 in emergency humanitarian assistance to bolster local relief operations. Amid the chaotic rescue efforts, an ominous new threat has emerged downstream. Scientists from the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICMOD, and disaster management officials have issued urgent warnings regarding a high risk of a secondary flood. Satellite imagery obtained from Chinese agencies indicates that the massive landslide has partially blocked narrow sections of the river system, creating an unstable landslide dam and forming a rapidly rising artificial lake near the border. If this temporary blockage breaches suddenly under the pressure of the reservoir or additional monsoon rainfall, it could release a secondary torrent downstream. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority has issued strict evacuation orders for all residents, rescuers, and workers remaining near the riverbanks across the lower coastal corridors of Rasuwa, Nuwakot, Dading, Gorkha, and Chitwan districts. Downstream communities in neighboring India have also been placed on high alert as hydrological teams continuously monitor water levels. This catastrophic event marks the second time in just 14 months that this specific Himalayan corridor has been devastated by severe flash flooding. In August 2025, a glacial lake overflowed in the region due to unusually high summer temperatures, killing 9 people and damaging newly built infrastructure. Climate scientists and geomorphologists point to these recurring disasters as clear, data-backed evidence of the escalating impacts of climate change on high mountain environments. As global temperatures rise, glaciers in the Himalayas, often referred to as Earth's third pole, are weakening at an accelerated pace, leading to more frequent structural failures, ice avalanches, and glacial lake outburst floods, GLOFs. The repetitive destruction has exposed severe gaps in regional early warning networks and transboundary data sharing. Environmental experts and former government officials have noted that despite the lessons of the 2025 floods, Nepal still lacks a real-time hydrological data transmission mechanism with upper riparian authorities in China. The absence of an automated, instantaneous warning system meant that when the mountainside collapsed on Wednesday morning, there was no digital alert transmitted downstream to save the lives of those working along the riverbeds and customs ports. As night falls over the Himalayas, the window for finding further survivors trapped beneath the heavy mud is rapidly closing. For thousands of families across Nepal and around the world waiting for news of their missing loved ones, the unfolding disaster remains an agonizing vigil against the backdrop of an altered and dangerous landscape. Devastating flash floods in the Bhote Koshi River in Rasuwa have impacted nearly 10% of Nepal's total electricity generation capacity. Managing the country's power supply has become increasingly challenging following extensive damage to power generation, transmission, and distribution infrastructure. According to Minister for Energy, Water Resources, and Irrigation Biraj Bhakta Shrestha, the Nepal Electricity Authority, NEA, is working on a high-priority basis to maintain a balance between power demand and supply. Although the NEA has successfully kept the national grid stable so far, necessary preparations have been intensified as the extensive flood damage could present further challenges in the coming days. Preliminary reports indicate that 12 power generation plants with a combined capacity of 431.1 megawatts have been shut down and knocked offline. Furthermore, initial estimates show that 15 hydropower projects currently under construction, representing a total capacity of 470 megawatts, have also sustained damage, Minister Shrestha stated. In terms of transmission, the Trishuli 220 kilovolt 3B hub substation has been completely destroyed. The floodwaters have also damaged several 132 kilovolt, 66 kilovolt, and 220 kilovolt transmission lines and towers. As a result of the flood, power supply in Rasuwa has been completely cut off, while parts of Nuwakot, Dading, and Gorkha are experiencing partial outages. Initial reports also reveal that over 196 employees and workers stationed at Veru https://english.nepalnews.com/s/business/Bhote-Koshi-floods-12-hydropower-plants-shut-workers-missing. Meanwhile, an unprecedented international relief effort is underway in Nepal after a catastrophic glacier collapse in the early hours of Wednesday, August 26, 2026, triggered massive flash floods, with nearly 1,400 individuals still reported missing across both sides of the border. Among those missing are hundreds of foreign tourists and pilgrims from at least 28 nations, complicating search and rescue missions in the rugged, high-altitude terrain. The government of Nepal, led by Prime Minister Balendra Shah, officially declared the worst-hit municipalities in the Rasuwa, Nuwakot, and Dading districts as disaster crisis areas, paving the legal pathway for a sweeping mobilization of international military, financial, and logistical assets. Neighbors, global superpowers, and international organizations have swiftly responded to the crisis with critical aid. As the downstream nation directly affected by the flow of the Trishuli and Narayani rivers, India activated a comprehensive humanitarian assistance and disaster relief (HADR) protocol within hours of the glacier's rupture. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke directly with his Nepalese counterpart, assuring that the people of India stand in full solidarity with Nepal. The Indian Air Force, IAF, immediately launched a C-130J Super Hercules transport aircraft to Kathmandu, delivering 10 metric tons of critical relief items. This initial cargo contained specialized temporary family shelters, heavy-duty blankets and cold weather gear, comprehensive hygiene kits to curb waterborne disease outbreaks, high-intensity solar lamps for blacked-out mountain communities, and life-saving broad-spectrum medical supplies. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs confirmed that additional C-17 Globemaster and C-130 flights are being mobilized, while military helicopters have been earmarked for complex high-altitude operations. Concurrently, downstream Indian states like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh have placed local disaster management forces on high alert to handle incoming surges. On Thursday, coordinated efforts successfully tracked and accounted for nearly 100 missing Indian tourists stranded in remote trekking hubs. With the disaster originating along the sensitive, mountainous Nepal-Tibet border, Beijing's response has focused heavily on financial flexibility and territorial rescue coordination. The disaster devastated parts of Tibet's Gyirong County across the border, prompting Chinese Prime Minister Li Qiang to visit the Tibetan autonomous zones to oversee recovery operations firsthand. In Nepal, Chinese Ambassador Zhang Maoming worked closely with Nepal's Ministry of Finance to orchestrate an immediate transfer of financial aid. This liquid cash injection is designed to bypass clogged physical supply chains, allowing the Nepalese cabinet to purchase local food and fuel reserves. On the ground, Chinese personnel managed to locate and secure 25 Chinese workers caught in the border region while coordinating cross-border data on glacial lake stability. The United States government, via Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the State Department, expressed deep concern for the widespread structural destruction, which has wiped out 13 crucial hydropower projects and completely severed 40 kilometers of vital highways. To assist, the U.S. has dispatched a dedicated disaster response advisor to Kathmandu to steer international operational strategy. The U.S. has provided an immediate $500,000 grant routed through Catholic Relief Services. This money is specifically targeted toward establishing clean water, sanitation, and hygiene (WASH) systems to avoid cholera outbreaks in isolated villages. Recognizing that the financial toll of rebuilding shattered infrastructure will cripple Nepal's seasonal economy, the World Bank stepped forward with an extraordinary financial framework. The World Bank's country director informed Finance Minister Dr. Weigel that up to 25 billion Nepalese rupees, $163.55 million, would be dynamically reallocated from current portfolios to serve as a fast-tracked emergency response facility. This capital represents the backbone of Nepal's long-term strategy to rebuild its shattered energy and transit corridors. The timing of the disaster caught hundreds of high-altitude trekkers completely off guard. The Nepal Tourism Board and foreign embassies estimate that over 470 foreign nationals from 28 countries remain completely out of contact. South Korea has taken the rare step of preparing an integrated team of national police, emergency medical technicians, and foreign ministry officials to fly directly to Kathmandu to assist local authorities in tracking its citizens. Canada confirmed that at least 24 Canadian citizens are actively missing in the high-altitude zone. The Canadian government is working hand-in-hand with regional search operators to cross-reference flight and hotel manifests. Australia and Japan have both officially registered deep diplomatic concerns regarding their citizens. The Australian Red Cross has ring-fenced its Global Emergency Fund to funnel financial assistance straight to local branches, while establishing specialized hotlines to link frantic families with consular teams. While global aid pours into Kathmandu, the ultimate bottleneck remains the brutal mountain geography. A massive wall of mud and rock dropped nearly 7,000 feet into the river valley, causing water levels to rise by 9 meters in under half an hour. This sudden force obliterated 80 bridges and left deep mountain settlements accessible only by air. Organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, Islamic Relief Worldwide, and Direct Relief are navigating these blacked-out regions. Medical relief teams are moving on foot, utilizing pre-positioned field medic packs to treat survivors suffering from severe trauma, hypothermia, and water contamination. As the United Nations and Antonio Guterres continue to mobilize personnel and resources to bolster the government-led initiative, the coming days will prove critical. Rescuers face an uphill battle against high winds, fractured communication networks, and the constant threat of secondary landslides. A nurse said his relatives were swept away by the devastating flash floods in Nepal as he launched a fundraiser to support those affected by the disaster. Rajendra Pudasaini, president of the Non-Resident Nepali Association UK, said Nepal was witnessing an irreplaceable loss, adding that the country was paying the price for global warming. The nurse, who works at Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow, Essex, told the Press Association, "My wife's auntie and uncle, and their granddaughter and her husband are missing, and my godson as well. They're gone. The speed the water came, they couldn't be saved. They were just swept away. The town and the villages were swept away. It's a tragic thing." Officials said about 90 U.S. citizens remained unaccounted for Thursday. Many of the missing were on a pilgrimage to Mount Kailash in Tibet, a sacred site for Hindus, Buddhists, and others. Among those on a guided tour was Venus Rajnikant Patel, a 45-year-old Indian-born U.S. citizen who recently moved from St. Louis to Cincinnati to help his family. Patel's friend Jolene Gosha said she and her friends knew Patel was in Nepal and were devastated when they realized he was staying at a hotel along the border where the flood swept through. "We're just hoping that by some chance he was able to climb his way out of it," Gosha told the AP news agency. "I don't want to give myself false hope because I know the reality is that he's probably not with us.